You know that deeply specific feeling when you sit around a campfire late at night. The flames are dying down to a bed of pulsing orange embers, and the wood is occasionally popping. Someone across from you starts telling a ghost story, a wild memory, or a bizarre piece of local gossip. Without even realizing it, you lean in, and your pupils dilate to capture the low light. Your heart rate begins to slow and your breathing syncs with the rhythm of the speaker's voice. You feel an inexplicable sense of safety combined with an intense, almost hypnotic focus. You might think this is just a cozy weekend vibe, a pleasant break from the relentless glare of your modern life. But your body is actually remembering something much older. Your biology is reacting to a stimulus that shaped the very architecture of your brain. Strip away the nylon tent, the cooler of drinks, the distant hum of a highway, and the smartphone in your pocket. Replace them with the crushing absolute darkness of the Pleistocene night. Replace the distant traffic with the cough of a cave lion and the snapping of dry brush. Imagine the desperate, shivering huddle of your ancestors, wrapped in animal hides, staring out into a void filled with teeth and claws. For hundreds of thousands of years, the small space illuminated by a fire was the only safe place on Earth. It was a fragile island of light in an ocean of predators. And in that circle, humans did something that changed the trajectory of our species forever. They told stories. Why did ancient humans tell stories around the fire? If you look at it through a modern lens, it seems like an evolutionary luxury. When you are burning precious calories, dodging hyperpredators, and freezing in the ice age, why waste energy weaving elaborate fictions? Why not just sleep to conserve energy? The surprise is that storytelling was never a luxury. It was not entertainment, but the most critical survival technology our species ever invented. Before we had writing, before we had agriculture, before we had steel or gunpowder, we had narrative. Stories were the cognitive software that allowed a fragile, clawless, slow-running primate to conquer a planet of monsters. Let us look at the first piece of the evolutionary puzzle, memory, and mental maps. Imagine you are an early Homo sapiens navigating a vast, unforgiving landscape. You need to remember water holes, sheltered caves, and where the herds cross. Raw data is absolutely terrible for human memory. If an elder just listed dry facts, you would forget them when you were starving. But wrap that information in a story, and it somehow becomes unforgettable. Anthropologists note that their ancient myths are actually highly accurate ecological maps. A story about a spirit hiding water is not a fairy tale. It is a manual. The firelight provided the environment needed to download maps into the next generation. Flickering flames actually enhance memory consolidation, a quirk of our tired neurobiology. It ties visual stimulation to the hippocampus, locking spatial data into your memory. The second beat of our survival technology is simulating death without actually dying. The Pleistocene was a world where you only get one mistake. You cannot learn by trial and error when the error means being eaten. How do you teach a reckless teenager not to wander into the dark? You tell them the story of the boy who ignored warnings and died. Human brains are uniquely wired for mental time travel and simulation. Stories act as flight simulators for physical and social danger. Around the fire, elders could run the youth through thousands of scenarios. What do you do if a stranger offers meat? Or if the ice cracks? It was not just physical danger, it was also moral danger. Human survival relied entirely on group cooperation. A selfish hoarder or a violent bully could destroy the whole band. Stories encoded the moral rules of the tribe. They created a shared reality where cheating meant being cursed by the ancestors. The campfire was the original courtroom enforcing the contracts that kept us alive. This brings us to the third piece of the puzzle: biological synchronization. And the limits of human socialization, which is just fantastic. You have heard of the Dunbar number, the cognitive limit of stable relationships. It is roughly 150, not that you could manage even half that. Early human bands needed to cooperate with neighbors to survive droughts and rival tribes. How do you build trust with people you only see a few times a year? You share stories because that is apparently all we have. When you sit around a fire, you are not just passively receiving information. Your biology is syncing with the people next to you, which sounds exhausting. Studies of groups sharing narratives show that heart rates and neural activity align. The firelight triggers oxytocin, the bonding hormone, while suppressing the stress hormone. In the brutal calculus of the ancient world, a bonded tribe shared food. They defended each other and cared for the sick if they felt like it. The story around the fire was the glue. It created an US. It turned unrelated individuals into a cohesive superorganism. They were capable of taking down a mammoth or repelling a rival clan. The fourth beat focuses on the most vulnerable members, the children. Human infants are born remarkably premature compared to other mammals. It is a consequence of our massive brains and narrow pelvises. Obviously, this means human childhood is incredibly long, requiring years of intensive care. The campfire was the ultimate classroom, though nobody asked to be there. Children do not learn through lectures. They learn through play and imagination. The shadows dancing on the cave wall were the first cinema. When the storyteller used voices and suspense, they were hijacking neuroplasticity. The suspense of a story triggers dopamine, which locks in the memory. The fire kept the predators at bay, but the story kept minds engaged. It shaped developing neural pathways to understand the complex social world. It was an intergenerational transfer of wisdom that no other species could replicate. Picture a specific night, maybe 40,000 years ago. The air is biting cold. The smell of roasted marrow and wood smoke hangs heavy in the air. A grandmother, her face lined with the harsh sun and wind, holds a piece of charred wood. She draws a shape in the white ash, and the children lean in, their eyes wide, reflecting the orange embers. She begins to weave a tale of the first hunter, a man who learned to speak the language of the wind. The adults, exhausted from a day of tracking and foraging, let their shoulders drop. The rhythmic cadence of her voice acts as a lullaby and a rallying cry all at once. In this circle, there is no past or future, only the eternal present of the narrative. The darkness beyond the firelight is full of snapping twigs and glowing eyes. But inside the circle, there is order, there is meaning, and the story builds a fortress of words that the monsters cannot penetrate. Now, here is the reversal, because we like to think that we have outgrown the campfire. We live in climate-controlled boxes, illuminated by the sterile glow of LEDs. We think of stories as mere entertainment, something to consume while we eat dinner or scroll through our phones. But look closer at your modern life, because you are doing the exact same thing your ancestors did in the Pleistocene. You are seeking the fire, and the screen is just a digital campfire. The neurological mechanisms are identical. We are still desperate to synchronize our heartbeats with others. We are still desperate to simulate danger from the safety of our couches, still desperate to map our social world. We have not evolved past the campfire. We have just built billions of smaller, portable ones. Our modern anxieties and our viral outrage cycles are just the ancient brain trying to make sense of the dark. We are just looking for the elder to tell us what the shadows mean. So the next time you find yourself captivated by a great book or a gripping movie, pay attention to your body. Notice how your breathing changes. Notice how the rest of the world fades away into the background. That is not just you being entertained. That is the ancient machinery of your brain waking up. That is the echo of 100,000 nights spent huddled against the dark, sharing the only light we had. The fire outside may have burned out, replaced by the cold glow of pixels and glass, but the fire inside the story is still keeping us alive. We are and always will be the children of the campfire.